Quiet crickets. So very quiet. See, some more quiet. I just keep going being real quiet. I'll lose it. Finally have you all tune away, finally. Just because you want to be quiet. That's what crickets do. That's the idea. Seems to be the experience. And pretty soon the sun will come out, and pretty soon the heat will rise. The crickets will get louder. And for us, that's not a good thing. And for those of you on past casts and broadcasts, this will be BTWRLM 209. As we continue week to week, witnessing the cricketeers, cricketdom. It's heavy on the DUMB. I'm, in a way, stunned. I'm thinking here, again, I start the broadcast, I got everything else to say, and then I come to the broadcast, have to start stuff up, and my mind just goes into other modes. Thinking last week, that didn't take long, did it? Talking about the setup between McCain and Trump, and what's going on in SYRIA. And I made the setup about how something's gone on with McCain and been put in his place and all, and I said, but don't be persuaded. That didn't take long. As Trump bombs the heck out of one airfield. Now, I'm not going to talk too much more about it. I'm not going to do the analysis. I want to go through and do a couple points on that. I made some just comments. I couldn't believe what I was watching, that they actually pulled that. It's a disgrace and stupidity. That's STOOPIDITY, for those of you that are sensitive to some words. Didn't last long. I told you be careful on what the prep is. When they're telling us the prep, when they start saying things in an order that says, oh, let's leave them alone, let's let them do what they want. We're here to help. We're from the government. We're here to help. Remember that one? That was one of the same style of discussions. I said, be careful. We're seeing the setup, but watch the caveat here. I don't know, it wasn't 3 days, wasn't it? Bomb series airstrip. Now, the point about the thing about the airstrip is just, in a way, ludicrous as well. What message did it really send? There's a lot to see in this little report, and for me, it's not doing the news, it's doing the notice to us that we really need to pay attention. This is the same thing that they do here, is just in different ways upon different subject matter. U.S. bombing Syria. NEOCONS love Trump now. Supporters stunned. In fact, I think John Rappaport just put out a Twitter and said something about, when did Trump stop listening to his followers? And I responded back. I said, when did he ever accept to get induce their vote? When did he ever listen to the followers? I mean, just the followers alone says he's a supposed leader. He's not listening to them. He's only listening to them like any other occupier might. It's enough to keep their favor. And now he's got the favor of the ones that were attacking him the whole time just because he sent some missiles over. And they weren't cheap. I estimated by the price of the military website, those cruise missiles were $569,000 apiece, and they dropped about 59 of those on one airfield. And a lot of them didn't make it. So those of you that are on the war side, that's why we spend so much for war material, because it doesn't work apparently. And I say that biting my tongue that may sound like I'm agreeing that they should have bombed that airfield. I'm just saying, look what happened. They went and did a stupid thing, STOOPID, and they then missed the target more than a third off. The material being sent is not doing what it's supposed to do, and a lot of the damage I saw, it didn't look like it was much more than a $569,000 hand grenade. Because I didn't see much damage to the places that got hit. But Trump sends 60 missiles from naval ships into an airstrip, an air base, so-called. It's an air base on the outskirts. Based on what, folks? And this is the thing that got me. And I'm not saying my listeners here are fell for any of it. I'm saying that this is the problem. This is that anybody falls for this and continues to fall for it. Is our problem in many other areas. I don't know, really, I don't know if you appreciate, I get a little bit disappointed in us being crickets. You don't realize how deep cricketdom really is, how comprehensive it is. Just because he spends $34 million, and that's just a low estimate. That's an estimate at $500,000 per cruise missile. He spends $34 million and the neocons go nut. Raytheon's stock goes up for a day. We are an insane people. And now he has favor even of the Democrat, the liberal side. I didn't know the liberals were such warmongers. And I say liberals in quotes, all that stuff, because these terms don't mean anything anymore. I mean, even the ones that people go ahead and say, yeah, I'm this, don't even know what they're saying, I'm noticing. So I started listening very carefully. What was driving this sudden? I mean, they told us they were going to come out of the blue to do this. They did it actually out of the black and did it in the morning. But what was the whole point? They said that Syria gassed their own people. The same broken story that they've been going through the whole time about these governments at the United States and Britain and Israel. More importantly, Israel. We'll still get to the end of this and we'll see this. Israel wants dead. They make up these stories and people just buy it, and they just, again, this neocon situation, they just wanted to see, they want fireworks is all they want. They'll make up any excuse. McCain's right in on all that. I talked to you right at the end of the broadcast last week, and I said, watch out. They're telling us nothing's going to happen. It's coming. Don't keep your eyes open. But what was the stated reason? And it blew me away when you listen, video after video out of their own mouth, repeatedly. They attacked an air base in Syria. They violated, well, listen, I always look at this stuff, and there's always two things at least speaking in me. One thing that says, you're telling the people wrong. You listen, I'm telling you wrong when I say certain things, because there's always a multiple path. I was going to say, and I'm going to say it, that they in fact, given international law works, the country, United States of America, violated international law again. Not just new, again. Being in that country, they're violating the law again. Notwithstanding that the proxy war we talked about last week is being done by us. And it's for United States and Israel and Britain and on this whole collaborative group. And they're using the Arab Qatar and Saudi Arabia to pull it all off. They want to destabilize the whole place. But what was the impetus? They claimed to be Syria bombed some people and used sarin gas. The videos that came out were showing the supposed white helmets involved with trying to help people without protective clothing. Then the Russians came out and said, hey, we bombed an ammunition manufacturing depot, and inside there, the rebels who were manufacturing weapons were actually manufacturing chemical weapons. And when we bombed the place, we blew that chemicals up, and there was a really strong wind that drove it into the town. But the United States blames Syria as a humanitarian violation of the chemical weapons ban. And remember, they were certified. Syria was certified by an international group to have removed all their chemical weapons, which at the time I wondered whether or not Russia was helping to eliminate a future problem. And I think Russia's suggestion to intervene and make sure that Syria got rid of those chemical weapons really plays here very loudly. If you forgot about that, they were supposed to get rid of the chemical weapons, and they did. But what was the word that they used over and over after this to justify? It was remember, they had pictures of all the dying dead and wounded children. What Trump calls babies, and I go with that at some point. Okay, if there's babies, there's babies. And the other people that were in the videos being gassed, notwithstanding what the white helmets weren't protecting themselves from a nerve agent that if it just gets on your skin, you're dead. It's not chlorine. But what was the word they repeated over and over that was the impetus for retaliating against this outlying airstrip? And then only 29 new cruise missiles hitting, or 23 cruise missiles hitting out of 59 or 60. Trump comes up and says that Trump attacks Syria upon images of the babies. Images, folks? Images? That's it? That's your whole reason for being? And then a false witness because they didn't spend enough very long time to then finger Syria for this act. Didn't take any time. So images, folks, is what all it takes anymore. I want you to consider this when they keep telling you about your imaging you and your face. All it takes is an image to cause a retaliation, an aggression against anybody. So we spend, supposedly the United States government spends over, it was 34 million was the low number and didn't include what it took to deliver those missiles, which the number should be maybe in the over 100 to 200 million dollars it cost to send some fireworks into an outlying airbase upon images that something had been done. I also want to call your attention, I don't know about you, but all the video I have seen, I have not seen a woman involved in any of the pictures. Where do women go? But neither here nor there. The stories come out in the quick following. Trump's wag the dog moment was a report that I have, and they talk about this condition. Again, I look at this stuff, and if you're not up on it enough to understand it from the title, then you need to study a whole lot more, I think. We need to get into understanding what these people, these psychopaths, sociopaths, what these criminals in office do, what the underlying agenda is, and that agenda is in your life. It doesn't look like it. I keep telling you about it. I keep showing you the methods they use to keep you there and keep us on it. But they're using the same. The underlying culture of imposition is in every country, actually. It's already been functioning. We find it all the time, over and over. The laws were put in place in this country back in the 80s to perpetuate the very similar thing that they do over there. They blame a thing that didn't really happen upon no evidence, and then they claim that someone's going to pay for it. Isn't that what climate change is? Isn't that what food security is? Isn't that what housing security is? Isn't that what any other service that's invented based on a fraud? Isn't that what I say about sustainable development and its method of implementation? Consensus, policy, no law, foreign. Trump's wag the dog moment. I was going to read a little bit about it. I just get to the point. I don't know why would I read something that's so obvious? Why would I want to waste my time on my listeners in some regard? You'll get the links. I just gave you the title. You can type it in as fast. And I'm just wondering now, I'm openly wondering now, what do I do here? Am I a reader? Am I a storyteller? How much do I present the story? How disgraceful. I just almost can't get over this point. How disgraceful this is on so many levels. We send some missiles over to an airstrip. Oh, that'll teach them. Well, if they didn't do anything, it won't teach them anything. But you're seeing, again, the setup. You're seeing how they're taking down a nation and they're trying to make it work. And then you see the ineffectualness of the UN, the very organization that's putting all this governance goons upon you. And you sit as crickets to it. And that bothers me a whole lot because I already know I'm watching it. We're in battling as well as we can with a handful of people, and if wherever we aren't, they get territory. They take over your mind. They take over the capacity. They put an imposition on you. Makes your life more difficult. You have to work longer if you work. You get your life been pulled apart more because you're not on the front line stopping the very types of evidence we see on how they're taking you down. The war scenario is probably the pinnacle. It's the most obvious. The war against you is local as well. It's no different. They create an issue. They then have an outcome already determined. You don't think that they sent these cruise missiles by a plan that was established months ago? If that's the case, what Trump just did is a lie as well. And I'll tell you, when I saw this, I realized, I said it's a narrow door what we were trying to do for the enforcement of our lawsuit. That possibility in my soul, it dropped. The possibility dropped that we're dealing with anybody that could. I was holding out a little bit of hope that it's possible that this might actually will work inside the system as we have it, We can't change it, so let's go work through the thread that's available to us. It's still there. I'm just saying, when I saw the depraved response to this issue by someone who pretended essentially to hold a better line, a higher scale, you can understand that it starts to pretend very poorly for us generally. I see it as a direct reflection of here, of home, if you will. And I've been telling you for a long time, I have proven to myself for sure, and I have a default judgment in a federal court, if I look at it for myself, and not including my colleague or the district or the assembly of men that are involved with that district that had a remedy that executed, that prevailed by default. These criminals didn't even want to come to court to respond to the claim. Now it's beyond the claim. That for me, it's beyond question in what level of criminality we're actually dealing with. That if we the people, not the ones that are voted in as representing you, men and women, but we the people that are the men and women of the country. A country is a place. It's the land where you live. We can get around all these nuances. It's where you live. I don't care. At some point you're going to have to find yourself in a real world, not work that fiction so much. That we don't come together on this. And this is providing actually, for as many people as the NEOCONS. Those are a small group of people that love the fireworks. He just alienated a bunch of people that were supportive of him. This is Trump. That he alienated a whole lot of people. He did like what happened to Ron Paul's group and what happened to the Obamites and whatever you want to call them. It's a political war against you. So Trump's wag the dog moment was another title you can look up. But let's look at some of the dynamic underneath it. And I want to start to focus a little bit on really what's the persistent cancer in this. Bannon happens right before that decision was made to attack a country, a sovereign country with a democratically elected government, no less. Not a regime like all the people will tell you, if you haven't got that part. There was a discussion right before about this, and there was influencers inside the Trump, and now he's no excuse. He is old enough to make these decisions, and he ought to be old enough to understand what he's looking at. So there's no extortion. I mean, well, yeah, there is. At some point, there can't be an extortion. He's the president, and he's got unlimited power if you haven't figured it out. Let me go back to something I forgot to say. I went about the international law, and I was going to say it's under international law, but I'm kind of lying to you a bit, because why? It's always a dual statement. I can't only stay one track. I have to, if I really wanted to explain it all to you, I'd have to go down each track to be completely truthful and honest. I'd have to explain everything all the time. When I say that the United States violated international law, I have to hold my tongue in cheek and hold on and hope you remember that that's not true either. Because with respect to the United States government being the biggest, baddest brute in the world now, it's dog eat dog and they're the big dog, and you better be big enough to be able to stand up against that big dog, or you have nothing. That big dog said, we're recognizing no international law. And where'd they say that? They said that in the memo. The memo of, I think it was 2010. That was for support NDAA. Remember, I read it. So, I'm not lying to you, but I mean, to tell you that the total truth, I would just be here telling you all the rehistory of everything. You got to remember, you got to keep your brain, you got to keep memory going here. When you hear in the law that the international people are saying the United States broke international law, that they didn't get the memo. The United States gave notice back in 2010. They don't it does not recognize international law. And so now the UN, given even if it could be any good, it went crickets. And what good has it been anyway? But so inside there was a debate, supposedly a debate built on, and Bannon lost this debate on striking Syria to this kid that's also sitting right there, a family member of by marriage of Trump. And this starts to point out where, and Trump said this during the campaign, and I called this out a little bit. I don't like to jump all on it because I don't study the subject matter. I look at what they do. I don't care what they want to call themselves. That can be a lie. What do you do? What's the final result? Where are you peaceful or do you strike people? It's pretty simple. I don't have to get all complicated on it. So, the United States struck somebody without actual right. They claim images of babies were what caused their right to go attack a sovereign country. Completely ludicrous. Completely, but that's what we've done. See, we don't have we have no moral compass international law-wise. And there's nobody out there big enough to stop us. And that's the existence you have within the walls of the United States of America that you don't know already exists. That wall I told you has already been built. It's not only been built you didn't notice it being in all the military around you, but it was also built in your mind. Even those of you that think you understand. You really don't have a clue. And if you did, I think you might turn into more like me, figuring out what you can do, what little bit you might be able to do, that you can get to work. Because it's not all over. It's just it's only over when you really give up. I'm not a fat lady and I don't sing, so I can't rely on that measure. I guess that's not available to me. I'm not a fat lady and I don't sing, so I guess I got to get to work too. So, no, I don't mean to embarrass and ridicule any overweight women. That's a very serious problem and a very hard problem to deal with, as I have helped women to best that I knew how to resolve things that only women have in their bodies and how they respond to the world. So I'm not totally aligned on that. The point is, it's a euphemism, metaphor. When the opera lady sings, it's the end. When she finally sings, it's over. Well, I'm not any of that. So I got to get out there and figure out what to do against this. And a lot of people think that they do, and I can see that they don't. And it bothers me for all y'all that think that. But I don't know what to do more. It's me. I'm me, and you're you, and that's how this works. But there was a debate inside the government, somewhat, and it shows something of a direction. Bannon lost to Kushner in the Syrian debate. Kushner is the son-in-law to Trump. Based on my discussion last week with McCain coming to bear, there's some video out. If you look at him, McCain had something told to him, and he had to make a decision to change his opposition. And that happens in the last week as we led up to this decision to attack an airstrip. Remember, it's just an airstrip. They didn't go after the government, actually. They're actually using the fact that they did a measured attack on the airstrip at they called an air base, and I guess it is an air base, so you do operations out of it, as a justification for the measured ability they had recognizing international law to attack. It did nothing. It actually did nothing. They were doing operations out of that place right after another. This was almost something I was looking at when I started watching it. This makes no sense at all. Maybe this is just Trump's action to appease what's going on, and McCain comes right on top about who was dogged on him since the election. And so I asked it. I had a Twitter, and you'll get all these links if you want to. Just ideas coming out and thinking, well, what's going on? And it did occur to me as a flash. I always try to give people the power. If they, I don't know everybody. People may be much more intelligent than they look like. That may be what they do. They may be playing Machiavelli beyond my comprehension. And so I'm going to give them that side, what I can conceive that would be, that it had flashed in my mind that Trump is a master game player. Now don't go off the end saying I'm supporting it. He's a reality game show host, okay? So try that one. Try that. That's the first thing we start with. But I want to open the possibilities of what's going on so we can anticipate things. Given he's a genius war gamer, and he found himself into a problem when he got into the office that he may have understood, but he didn't quite know until he got there what exactly the terrain was for him. And then we saw McCain step up. My question was, what does McCain have on Trump that the the attack, because McCain is the warmonger, he's the guy that we're finding out is helping this thing with the neocons like Hillary Clinton and all these others. What did McCain have on Trump that he decided to go ahead and do something such as a targeted, limited attack which really didn't do anything, but it certainly seemed to excite the NEOCONS, didn't it? It got their favor, didn't it? That what extortion is behind the scenes of all this intelligence gathering that they did unconstitutionally, for as much as it can be considered valid anymore? What did Trump address when he? How did that satisfy an extortion that could have been placed on him, and why we saw McCain change a bit? And he was going to go ahead and say, "I'm going to give you your fireworks." And there was a deal made on the fireworks, but the deal was, in the execution, okay, we're going to give them the fireworks, but we're only going to do this over here. And by the way, we're going to send off 60, and how about if you misdirect a whole bunch of them? I don't know. That may be a little bit March, but what did Trump do to satisfy McCain that McCain shut up and got on his side? Or are we dealing in Trump with an emotional lunatic? Let's get back to those images. That was his whole focus. Images of babies that were dead. No relation, no connection, no verification, no nothing. No women in the picture. Images. And he was all over the babies that should never suffer this. They also mentioned that it was likely sarin gas. Likely is certainly not probable cause to go attack another nation. And then the attack was limited. Why? What was that serving? And to have McCain get off his back. I think is, at least for myself, an interesting question to ask about the dynamics that Trump may be up against, given he's a reality game show game player. He says he writes the deal. Maybe he is. Maybe he's the master dealer. He's also the master game player. So I'm going to hold that out. Don't think I believe it. I'm going to hold it out as a possibility. I'm doing that because I want to keep my mind clear and comprehensively able to receive what we might be seeing. Why? Because for those of you that you may not still pick this up and understand what I'm telling you, it reflects on what's going to happen where you live. For as little as it seems like it actually directly affects you, there's already people in offices around the governments that affect you that are implementing these tactics, that are influenced by these things, that may or may not have people in places that can get inside of the cancer and destroy it from inside. I always hold out, again, I told you I may be the eternal optimist here. I always hold out that there's somebody that's actually stepping in and figured out way better than I could do it. I can't get in. People don't listen to what I'm doing. As soon as I show up and I make my claim of the truth and the law and what we should be following, everybody runs away. First of all, it's beyond them. Secondly, if they're the criminal, they realize it's going to catch them. They don't want to listen to me. Not because I'm wrong. But on my own, I'm doing nothing. And so there's things you have to work through the reality. So I'm not the one that's going to pull this off. Maybe Trump can. Maybe this game player can. But they had a fight inside, apparently. We saw Bannon break down and move over from the National Security Advisory Council, or whatever they have, and that it was news. And I looked at it and said, okay, well, that's not so bad. I mean, he's not really doesn't have to be in national security. The National Security Council would just hand him their findings as a strategist for the senior strategist for the president, and he could make his decisions that way. He didn't necessarily have to be on that. As the week went on, you start to see, though, it may have been because there was a problem with debate with Kushner and an in-law to Trump. In the same week, Ivanka, is brought in, I think, as a non-paid advisor to Trump as well. And then you start hearing the politics. Well, so who is this Kushner guy? And you probably maybe done all the research and know better than me. I just, I kind of keep that. I don't care who you are. I want to know what you're doing. But now you got to find out who these guys are because you want to know where they're going. And quickly you can find out the Kushner Foundation. Who is this kid that had such an effect that caused Trump to make these decisions on such an emotional outburst based on images, pictures, folks, images alone. as he told us. It's not like they brought, oh, we have this, and this. Our intelligence found this. This is the radar. This is that. This is how we figured it out. This is the tests we've done. We sent our drone in there, our chemical robot in there, and it did chemical tests. No, none of that. Just on images, they tell us. And false witness. Now, I bring up the false witness a little bit late here, but remember, and I didn't know this until I had to do the research about Trump himself, he is, what? A Protestant? Catholic. This year, the treaty gets signed that they get joined back up after 500 years. Remember all this? We hear that the background of this is also Jesuits sitting in there, and all his cabinet members, or most of them. And the Catholics used the Jews to be able to tax, taxation on people that the Catholic Church couldn't put on the people. But the Jews could. Remember how this all starts to integrate. That I come here to look at who's Kushner, who's this kid that has such sway. Kushner Foundation bankrolls radical Jewish West Bank settlers. Comes right up. That's his father's foundation. So the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, I'm sure. But that's not an indictment on him. We got to go a little bit further. It says in recent years, the parents of Jared Kushner, son-in-law and trusted confidant of President-elect Trump, have donated tens of thousands of dollars to organizations and institutions located in the West Bank settlements, according to their tax forms. The United States State Department has long held that the settlements are an impediment to peace. During the election campaign, however, Trump's key advisor on Israel changed this position. I won't read more. You can get the article at the Blogcaster. His family is involved with doing radical Jewish, and that's I choke on that, folks. I don't think there is a Jewish that relates to the claim that they are making to a people. There is no such people. It's a religious belief. No different than Zionism is a political belief that's been supplanted and not used. It's used instead. I've been through all the proof on this. I don't get too deep into it. You either understand this and go do the study, or you don't. So we have someone who's already supporting a family member who's supporting the Jewish extremism in an area that they have not been actually given the land. They're called occupiers, and the United Nations itself says that that's unrighteous, and yet nothing goes on about this. So let's move on to Kushner. Who is this kid? A veritable kid here. A little goat. Again, Ivanka, I think she's changed. I think she's Jewish as well. I think she accepted the faith. Again, it's a faith. It's not what we're hearing. It's not a DNA thing. They might try to prove it. It's not. Let's put it this way. If there is, they can't even prove it yet. And I told you about the acquisition of the land. That blood has to attach to the land. You have to prove that. That's how you do it. That's what hereditaments are in property law. And in a regard, I feel real comfortable running to an objective basis like that, and it gets me completely out of, well, what do I think about it? Well, it has nothing to do with what I think about. It has to do with what the proof is. What's the standard, the objective standard, and what's the proof? I was just talking with somebody yesterday, dealing with a mining patent title, actually before the patent, a process that went on, and I'm listening to the gentleman's discussion, and it's no different than any of you all that are doing the patent searching. You got to take your abstract and you reduce it down to the proofs and evidence in the record, and that creates the chain and the links of connection between the patent and you. And as I'm listening to their chronology, I say, whoa, you have a problem. You have to fix this problem right here. If you don't fix this problem, there is no proof of the connection to you. They hadn't even seen that. We had to go by the mining law. We had to go back into like Lindley and look real carefully at what they said, what happens in the process of the issuance between the process of the claim, the process of the payment, the issuance of a receiver certificate, and when the rights attach and a transfer that happens, you have to go. It's point for point. It's provable on a record by writings. And so then I had to figure out, when I was listening, I said, you can prove what's not provable in a record, because the government's making a lie. You can show the proof that they're making the lie on, and that it is a lie, with these statements and affidavit that were already accepted by the same land board. Is my statement to you about these people that are in, Palestine, need to bring their, if they call it blood title, they got to bring their blood title and then attach it to the land. It's very simple that way. You don't come off of stories and what you dig up and what you believe and what some book said. You can show it. And this is where the United States was more powerful than any nation. It made sure it could show lots of stuff that way. But let's go on with Kushner. Who are we actually supporting here? What has gotten the influence of Trump? How could modern Orthodox Judaism produce Jared Kushner? And this is from a site called forward.com. Don't know anything about him. All I did is I typed in, who is this kid? Who is this kid that now is told to us had influence and destroyed the influence of someone else who said we shouldn't attack Syria? And then to come up with an attack that was such a disgusting excuse for a disgraceful reason for attacking anybody. But this question comes, how could modern Orthodox Judaism produce Jared Kushner? I thought it was a fascinating statement. This is a ultra Orthodox Jewish faith that is now questioning this kid as someone who's utilizing that as cover without showing that he is. They're not liking that either. This is so dyed-in-the-wool consistent now with what this kid's supposed to be doing, that he's even putting a cover over that it starts to become problematic for me as to what's driving the decisions. And we're going to probably find out as we look at this and just over on the surface, there is no proof going to drive the decision. It's really the agenda. It's the agenda of what Israel wants to do in the Middle East. And there's people that will talk about all that more than I ever will. And you can read it. You can find out all about it if you want to. But the slavery, in other words, was meant to assure the Jews would remember powerlessness once they gained power. Jared Kushner is what happens when that memory fails. This is highly critical of this kid that has the influence of Trump. They've actually been calling him President Kushner. So, again, you can get this article. You get into Blogcaster. You can read it. Remember, I've told you, when memory fails, we have trouble. They are proving that this is another confirmation of that I've told you years ago, it was proven to me about what they were doing to the mining law and ultimately your property rights in America, your land, your soil attachment. This becomes so consistent with what I'm explaining that the Orthodox Jewish faith leaders are saying, who is this kid to disrespect us this way when we were supposed to hold the memory and he's not exempling any of it? And now I get to the point, maybe what he's exempling is Zionism and not the faith. But it comes underneath the cover. So now we have the problem of what I told you before. You take something illegitimate and you attach it to something legitimate. Like climate change gets attached to Harvard. If you think Harvard and sciences that they're doing is legitimate, it's on your perception as well. So we have this as more tangible proof why there was an attack done. We come to find out, I think, that there was a missile battery that took out that Israeli jet that might be the actual focus of why they did such a bad job of teaching Syria why they shouldn't bomb their own people with chemical weapons, and we know that there wasn't any. I take that off as if we can believe the UN group that certified that they had no more chemical weapons. Why wouldn't I believe that if they're going to believe anything else? Why wouldn't we believe the Russian investigation over what happened there? Did anybody go check to see what the weather conditions were that day? Well, in a way, I did. I didn't do the weather, but I went through and looked at videos, and sure enough, there was a wind blowing that day pretty good in the area with the videos that I was seeing. So maybe that's what we're seeing, that the Russians have the story a little bit better, that we see the underlying influence of the president is one of the Israeli agenda. Not the Israelites, folks. Just remember, they're twisting all these words. I can't find any actual connection to anything that these people that are in there that are essentially ruining the Middle East. without actual settled proof that they have the terrain that they're occupying. Remember, they're considered occupiers there. That should tell you something. When I tell you the Bar Association occupies your life in America, don't consider that any different than when you look at another occupier somewhere else. They're not supposed to be there. International law, however, allows that as long as you allow it. Why? What have I told you over and over again? The occupier exists and can stay, and as long as you allow it, the obligation of the people that are being oppressed by an occupier is their duty once they find it is to throw off the occupier. Throw them out. When you don't, they're legally there. And they can change your laws over time. Those laws they can change, they change, and they make your existence what they want. You hear about the future we want? That's what it is. You're looking at the UN as a global occupier of their policies, their governance future. This is all consistent discussion. It doesn't matter what subject matter I go to, I will eventually come to I'll be able to organize it up the same way every time. And if any of you listening can't do that, you need to read some more, and you need to stop in your mind thinking you know what you're looking at. As I tell you, I think people do a great job in understanding that the dictionary is a good thing, but they took it too far. They didn't put a limit on what the dictionary means. And so we all think we know stuff, and we make up fantasy worlds and all this other utopia. And if you're not, let's put it this way, if you're not right, you're going to lose. And I'm saying you're not right, so you're going to lose. And you're going to lose at the point you're maybe not notice. Most of us probably won't really come into it. We're just going to feel the pressure. And at that point, we're going to die peaceful that we did what we could do. Oh, we said what we could say. We did what we could do. And that's going to be another style of deception we tell ourselves, the mental malware. So Kushner is tied directly to, apparently they believe, the Orthodox Jewish faith believe that he's one of them. And so there's not much that's going to come out of this other than that agenda. So you need to start studying what those people believe the world should be, because that's going to be your world when they have the ear of the man that can change the world. Why? Because what his word does and what his signature will do is enough to destroy people. Nobody stopped even an infantile attack and a half-hearted attack on an air base. Nobody. And we got a nice little synopsis of what was happening about the United States to show this kid's influence was pushing an agenda that was accepted by his father-in-law, Trump, when it was based on a lie. We all knew it. I appreciate this gentleman's statement. I think I got it from Gary L. on a Twitter. Former DIA Colonel Patrick Lang makes the statement. U.S. strikes on Syria based on a lie. He's a nice little synopsis. It's not real long to read. He lays out quite a few points. There's others, but he lays out enough that you know that what went on there wasn't real. It was a symbolic, if nothing else. If nothing else. So it's symbolic for whom is now I'm back to that with this gentleman's little synopsis on really how it was a lie. Again, he just put it together, what thoughts I'd seen for myself. I said, there's something way wrong with this. I hope you all did too. I need to take away a lesson from it, though, and I think we're seeing whom is the background influence, and that was told to us in the campaign as well. Why that becomes important for me, privately, is I have to now reconfigure what I'm looking at to see how do we still get through? How do we punch through this obstruction? If it's possible. And if it's not, then what do we do? And I'm saying, underlying everything I do is the knowledge that we live in an occupied territory. They call it the United States of America. And we are going to have to throw these people out if what I see as being that we're doing cannot. And what we're doing is we're making a record and giving up a notice of the record made of the crime and going to the people that have the obligation and duty to perform the remedy to alleviate the denial of justice. And when you don't to alleviate the denial of justice under international law, the thing that the bully and the brute won't recognize. That is the highest crime in our knowledge of us being us as people in the world, men and women. Keep deferring over to Ron Stephen with that. Men and women and is not the legal entities. They talk to you, the people. I told you the whole people. It's written right on some of the Capitol buildings. The whole people is a legislature inside. It's not you. And then they did the statutory overthrow. They called you person, and you thought so. You thought you were. And I told you how to. I told you how to show that. You go down to your Secretary of State, at least in the United States. I don't know if this is in Canada or Australia or anywhere else or Britain. I don't know if they do this in Germany. You go to the department of the government that has the listings for the corporations, and you go see if your name, the one that they charge you with, is there. That's the easy one. You just find the one that they charge you with to see if it's in the state. That's what in the state is. Their state, that state. That registry is there. And if you get evidence from their paperwork that says, no, you're not there, that's it. That entity doesn't exist. It's a fraud to charge it. You don't have to go, as Ron was explaining about getting a cardboard cutout. You don't have to even do that. Which I thought was, I've always find it interesting how people are addressing this. We all come up with the same ideas on how to expose the problem of the fiction, the flat paper that they make as people, people, I'll just say people, us, men and women, and who they have the authority to mess around with and who they don't. And Ron came up with one that we, I've thought about. I've got friends. We all laugh about it. Yeah, what do we do that with it? But I'm not saying don't do it, but I don't know. It's a little bit too theatric. I found out for myself to do. I'd rather do a little bit other things. I mean, it was as I told you, SCA, the Society of Creative Anachronism. I used to make armor. We used to get in armor and go beat on each other, like and literally beat on each other to kill each other. As far as it's just symbolic killing for hours in armor and war, literal wars. You got in the field to beat on each other. The idea is not to get beat on, I guess, is the point. But so that is where you get the idea of heraldry, and you get the idea of flags, and you start understanding when you do the study what they're all about. And the idea of entities and crowns and kings and all the difference of the people, the men and the versus the title. You start to understand all that. I started to see that as well. And what sovereignty is. And so you get the idea, well, what if I just have my retinue show up on a complaint, my retinue show up and challenge that sovereignty against my sovereignty? Even get in the idea, well, what flag would I bring? Well, I don't want to put much on a flag. Let's use the white flag. It's not one of surrender. That flag in international law on a battlefield means we're going to talk. We're going to work out our differences. And if you have a stand when we're done talking, we might still have to go to war, but at least we'll understand where we stood. And so that white flag comes in and it says we're going to talk about this because otherwise we're at war. So all that stuff came to mind. So this is how it relates. You're in a war. It doesn't matter how you do it. When you finally come to your wits about what's happening, you'll probably agree with me 100%. I can't say 100% because I don't know what you all find, what I didn't find. But this is we're talking about high international law violations that should be in every one of you. In fact, at the Mining Association meeting I was talking about, happened to get into a traffic ticket. It's amazing how fast I can bring international law into this on how that works. I won't say anything more than that. It's so clear of what's been done, how it all acts there, and we are oblivious to it. And if you don't understand that, in there is a lot of reasons and answers as to how you deal with all this stuff. Now, the problem is, which is harder for people to see, they truly don't believe, they don't believe that they're up against a system that's a criminal. It is literally an occupier, waiting for you to throw them out. Anyway, getting over to this. So we have Kushner, very key here. I tend not to look too much about this. I know it's there. Pushing the Israeli position, this cannot be disregarded at all. They've now opened this problem up. It's not hidden, if it ever was. I guess my point here is that this is now right on the table. What really is going on? Upon what? Images. That was their reason for attacking somebody. I saw a picture. I'm going to kill you. I saw a picture of what you done. I'm going to come and kill you. I'm going to attack you. I'm going to break all your windows out. I'm going to bust your door in. That's what they just did. How infantile is that? So this guy comes in, he makes a nice synopsis on what we do, and I looked at that and said, well, the U.S. launched 50 Tomahawk missiles. I said, tell me again, how is this supposed to stop is? As Trump said he intended. Well, someone doesn't know me that I'm asking rhetorical non-questions in my question, so they answered, they said it doesn't. I said, of course. Is us. Trump was only speaking to who he wanted to induce to get support from him. Why I questioned John Rappaport's question. Has he changed from his listening to his followers? He never listened to his followers, only to the extent to get them to say the stuff that would induce the vote, or at least bring some plausible representation that they believed in him. Because I don't even know about the vote. But we get the story right out, all in the same time about this very serious attack on Syria. I can't imagine. I mean, this is very serious. I'm not even talking to that part. It's so serious, I don't even know if I can talk to it. It's that serious, what happens. And crickets, even the international crickets. But the Russian Defense Ministry said that most missiles missed the target, and Russia, to boost Syrian air defenses, is the Russian response. See, they can protect themselves, but they may not be able to mobilize actually to attack, to stop. So there's some realities. And we have to, this is the realities that I'm trying to show you in international law, even someone who can protect themselves, like Russia, to whatever extent they're going to be able to do, in their historic persistence to prevail. This is the other thing that I think scares most people. The last baby goes down fighting in Russia, so that I think is a bigger power for them. But their response was to say that they're going to boost the Syrian air defenses is, to me, reflected. I don't have to read the story more than the title. Says that this is you addressing the big bad government who has the power to hurt you. You have to take cognizance of what you can do in the practical sense. It came up in the chat, UCY chat again. Well, if I go tell them this and that about driving, they'll beat me up. And well, then I said, you didn't make your record. And they said, well, they don't listen. They don't care about the record. I said, they do care about the record if you've made it right and presented it correctly. Have you ever done that? Now, I have direct experience in that. For those of you that think maybe I just talk, when this thing got going on me, when I said finally, when they got 5 cops going to shoot me dead for doing nothing, because they made that up too, and I somehow survived. I don't even know how I got past that time. I thought I was dead. And I'm here today, so I prevailed. They were still on me. They wrote me a traffic ticket, my first traffic ticket that I, in earnest, went after. I ended up winning. I had some people in the library, I told you all the story before, that helped me to understand, here's how you write paper to respond to these courts. This is my very first, so you know I don't know much of anything. I said, oh, is that all? Okay, let's do that. Well, in the meantime, the same cops that about killed me, their police force wouldn't let me go either. Every time I come into the town, they wanted to make a mess with me. Well, I went on my writing campaign as well. Once I saw what you do at the courts, it made pretty simple that you respond to the cops the same way. And you make your record. And it took me 6 months. This is not a silver bullet. And they try to be sneaky, and they try to get around. They try not to do certain things. I found the guy who was the chief of police in that place. And I went and I made a letter to him, put him on notice, and I told him about how he was going to be the one liable and what was going on. It took me 6 months, but making the record. Because you have to go back into the statutes or into the case law and find out, when do they become liable for the harassment? When do they become liable for the harm that goes beyond, that brings them out of their immunity? You have to go read to understand what that is, because that's what your target is. There's a way to do it. Once I did that, it took the 6-month letter writing campaign. Once I told them, if I see you again, now that you know, and it got beyond harassment, I started to understand what to write. Once I made the record that they knew that they were doing this, got them to say certain things that I then highlighted that they admitted that they were doing, even in their denial, It took about 6 months, but after a while, after that time, the last letter, I stopped seeing the cops. They stopped messing with me. Everything went quiet. And so I didn't have to sue them. But I got results. And I got results, in my understanding, my results were because I went and looked at the standard they're liable to. In the oppression we're under, you can still hold them liable outside of their immunities, and they all go down, and they know that. Whether or not you can end up perfecting that, they will stop short. If you haven't got that working for you, then you haven't made your record quite right. You've got to go see the detail elements of what causes them to come into liability. In other words, if you're getting harassed and you're not making a record, that's your problem. That you are harassed 3 times and make a record 3 times may still not be enough because it's the manner of the harassment. You have to find out by reading what that is. So here we have, and you're not going to destroy that system. You just want them to stop their crime against you. And so I was able to stop them making a record of their liabilities to the law that they failed to do. That their actions could not be excused and covered. That was made in record evidence. It took like 20 days, 14 days for them to respond. So it takes some months to work this out. At the end of 6 months, I never saw another city cop ever. As long as I was still in that same vehicle, yes, I use vehicle. What is it? Conveyance? What do you want me to use? As long as I was in that, they knew to stay away from me. It didn't happen until I made the correct record, and I showed on the record that they had no ability to defend themselves in the future. Is now what you see Russia can only do. They can't destroy and stop the bully, the United States of America. What they can do is set up a defensive posture for the one they're helping. They believe they can do that. So you're seeing Russia take a pragmatic response to an overwhelming power. And this is in what I tell you is you knowing the battlefield and deciding what you need to do that's the correct action in your certain circumstance. This little story, this little thing, Russian ministry says most of the missiles missed the target, but their response is going to be to boost the Syrian air defenses. Was a telltale for me that even if you're big and bad as Russia, you still have to look at the battlefield, and that could be you locally, and take the right action. You don't go attack the ships that sent the missiles. Not when they got that one you're going to attack has 13 aircraft carriers to 1. You got to be smart. You got to be intelligent. Forget smart is what they're doing to us. So when I, again, saw this Russian Defense Ministry saying that most of the missiles missed their target, what are we talking about again? We're talking about a $569,000 cruise missile. If that's the one that they use, they have 3 or 4 standards of cruise missile that don't get any cheaper. $569,000 to miss is those of you in the United States of America have to be concerned that what they claim or they're paying to Raytheon may not be what you're getting. And if you ever have to go to a war, when your sons and daughters go to war, they are going to be faced with the fact that the machinery that they're sending out there does not work 2/3 of the time. Maybe Russia doesn't have to match the United States, and they know it with their military capability. So, fodder in the future, but with this little disclosure about this synopsis that this gentleman tells us. In the meantime, what do we have? The news coming out to prop up President Kushner's decision to attack an airfield, and an aircraft came to attack the Israeli jet, or the missile system came to attack the Israeli jet. And I finally last night heard the news that one of the things that was damaged or destroyed was a radar installation on that airbase. They were saying that they hadn't said anything like that before. It would have been the radar station that actually picked that airplane up that targeted the missile to take out that aircraft. That no one is agreeing actually got taken out. But there we have it. That the media is again prominent in promoting that images, right out of their own words, images were what the causation was, and doing the false witness about what happened. that a report comes up and says that this is why CNN and all mainstream media must apologize for fake news Syria chemical attack. I bring this up. They mentioned the mirror. Almost everybody that showed the picture of the massacre of the babies, again, the images and the name are called out for the Syrian, what they call the Syrian government, the regime's chemical attack. And yet, you'll read in the article, it's completely debunked, these stories. More consistent with what Russia claims. And, your mind should kind of make that connection, given that they wanted Syria to be taken down, what was it, 2013, with their chemical weapons. The international body wanted to make sure that those chemical weapons were not in Syria's hands. I don't see any impetus for them to lie at the time they said the nation of Syria has no chemical weapons. That we come today that they now have chemical weapons, when in fact the proof exists that at least the chemicals were not really sarin gas, given the white helmet people can mess around with bodies barehanded and with dust respirators as well. A nerve agent that kills you, not just gives you trouble, but kills you, takes you out. That the chemistry wasn't actually sarin gas. And if it wasn't the main part. It certainly wasn't a munition that was dropped by the Syrian government. That again, they promote, all over, they splashed everywhere. Trump's statement, this was a chemical attack that was so horrific, it was killing innocent babies. And then we hear that us rebels actually had a chemical weapons facility there that the government bombed. And the reports that I have heard said that they may not have actually understood that there was chemicals there. They thought they were taking out a conventional weapons depot facility. So again, at some level, who knows what the story is? The bottom line I see is that we as a nation went and attacked an airfield, and not so deftly either, based on images that apparently affected Trump's heart was torn about the killing of innocent babies, and he repeats this over and over. He also referenced God 3 times, which I found fascinating. And why I say, what about the false witness? And when you attack someone, when you're judge, jury, and executioner on false witness, what does that make you? Not so God-fearing, and certainly not so settled in righteous morality. Again, that indicates another culture imposed upon you, having a great influence. And so what may be the two influences between the two that we know? It's the Israeli, Zionist influence. I don't give credit to it being Jewish. Zionist influence or Jesuit influence, which are both apparently have the ear of Trump. Which, if you extend out either factions, goes to a place that wants the destruction of the Muslim world, at least. That wants to break people down, that wants to bring them into servitude. It seems kind of interesting to me that in the United States, and even in Iran and in Syria, lots of faiths live together and have, at least in the other kind, the Middle East, for thousands of years, that all of a sudden they can't. And we see the evidence based upon, and the Bolivian UN representative in the Security Council was holding up, in response to this horrific killing of babies, the pictures that, Nikki Hayes is putting up. He puts up the picture of Colin Powell in the anthrax vial as yet another lie, right? So Bolivia's not falling for it no more. That this president, after all of this and purporting to be so intelligent and knowledgeable about all these things and having some inside knowledge, falls for it again, can't actually be falling for it. and then to bring up the name of God in vain in my mind, whatever that God is, and if it's anything good anyway, can't be a good sign for us. That we have the political influences that are no good, a disgraceful display on a nation that has the power to do good, and what we think it was. At least I would thought we did. I know in my spirit it would be better, a whole lot better. And the words failed. The words completely fail. And you have to understand that. And that's what's happening in your life where you live. And it's a lot of you have given into that. You say, oh, they're going to do that, I'm just not going to go interact. And part of that's okay, I guess, to do. But at some point, I've realized there's nowhere to go. You might squeak out. I mean, you might be able to hide enough times. But for the most part, the overall society and those little ones that were so innocent, they're the ones that are being taken down in the future by the same method that you didn't stop today. And by people like Kushner, Trump, whatever their belief system is, that will bring up authorities that most people follow and agree with, but without any rational basis, and always on an emotional level. And that doesn't exclude those of you that believe you critically think, because I don't think most of you do, actually. And probably why my listenership stays to those that understand what I'm talking about and appreciate that I keep coming here, and that we do it maybe more like friends than we would do ideology, or where our ideas are even similar. So we have this emotional outburst appears, or is this a master game player? I almost want to see this guy as a master game player, this guy Trump, and what he's done. And he's appeased, a brilliant move. He appeased for a little attack, for an attack that did nothing, and he knew wouldn't hurt him as a nation. Raised a lot of eyebrows for sure. Would now give Russia the right ability to come in and protect them more. You know, what, 6 airplanes got taken down or something like that. Do you think that Russia's going to replace those? No, they just said they're going to fortify the air defenses. So Trump just got rid of a bunch of old aircraft, apparently. So, none of it makes any sense. It's an emotional outburst it was a tantrum that came to no real purpose, other than to raise the eyebrows of a lot of people that are sane. And so this other report came up, and I thought it was interesting. I think Gary L. presided this as well. I wonder, what is this thing that we're suffering in all of us? Understanding the epigenetic controls that are on us, but the chemistry in our world that actually changes our DNA. They know that, so now they give you vaccines that will change you within 20 minutes. Your DNA gets unzipped and rezipped the way they want it. Are this the kind of people we're dealing with? I don't know. Can they change you by your environment? Well, I don't know, but here's a report that starts to lend itself to understand that that's happening. Who are these? Are these psychopaths really psychopaths, or are they just stunted by their environment, the chemistry that goes into it, and done it on purpose? Absolutely. That if you see it that way, we don't know. It's another possibility in my mind. The ones who run the agenda control those with the decision to do it. Is this a neurological behavior that was caused by some developmental toxicity? Neurodevelopmental disabilities, including autism, attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, dyslexia, and other cognitive impairments, affects millions of children worldwide, and some diagnoses seem to be increasing in frequency. Industrial chemicals that injure the developing brain are among the known causes for the rise of prevalence. In 2006, we did a systematic review and identified 5 industrial chemicals as developmental neurotoxicants: lead, methylmercury, polychlorinated biphenyls, arsenic, and toluene. Since 2006, epidemiological studies have documented 6 additional developmental neurotoxicants: manganese, fluoride, chlorpyrifos, dichloryl diphenyl trichloroethanes, and tetrachloroethylene, and the polybrominated diphenyl ethers. We postulate that even more neurotoxicants remain undiscovered. To control the pandemic of developmental neurotoxicity, we propose a global prevention strategy. Untested chemicals should not be presumed to be safe to brain development, and chemicals in existing use and all new chemicals must therefore be tested for developmental neurotoxicity. To coordinate these efforts and to accelerate translation of science into prevention, we propose the urgent formation of a new international clearinghouse. Now, there's no actual underlying authority to do that. It would be a library of cognizance that governments could take. But you're hearing the New World Order here, right on top. And you also notice they're trying to accelerate the translation of science into prevention. That's the there's a term for that. It just slipped my mind. The precautionary principle in play here. Let's go back to what they're telling us. That they're finding that these elements and chemicals do have neurobehavioral effects. Now, I don't know about this guy Trump, but he must brush his teeth. You think he's using fluoride, or does he know? Is he affected by anything else? We don't know. Are we affected that causes us not to respond? Has to come prevalent in our minds. We've been hearing about fluoride. That's what was highlighted, I think, in this one for our sake. But when you look at what's available there, and they ask the question, are there more? Well, yeah, there are. And now you're seeing back to anywhere you have these departments in the government that have the revolving door of the industry going into the department and coming out, you're seeing the writing on the wall for why and how that, it's all covered over. And on the one hand, I would applaud the review, a scientific study that exposes this to us so that we know. I think this has been planned and understood. And I don't think that this global hierarchy is going to change that. Remember, the WHO, not the Rot Group, not the OWL, but the WHO, the World Health Organization, are brokers for the very vaccines that we heard a couple of weeks ago are the tools that change your DNA. Okay, I'm pausing. I mean, does this thing, are you ahead of me on that, or did I just open up another, again, connection of how we're being treated, how we're being moved along, this herd mentality, this herd vaccination, this herd chemical, this what you get to use, what they'll allow. Remember, the Clean Water Act isn't an act to clean water. It's an act to pollute water a little bit. Same thing with the Clean Air Act. All the regulations are regulations regarding permits. Permits and licenses and registrations are tied to acts that are otherwise criminal without the permits, registrations, and licenses. Those regulations are standards for the perpetration of the crime. Where would you find that? You find that in Title 50. That's the War Department under United States law, and they give the government all these exceptions. I'll recall to you lethal injection done by Clint Richardson, and I think it was 20 minutes in, he starts reading Title 50. I'll remind you again, I explained to him why this is happening in the law. It's right there that they're telling you they get to do this stuff. Somehow the government became the ability to do all this. You have to start looking at how. And that's where I tell you about learning how to defeat even that. Because they were working on it. They got us, I think they won this foot race, and I don't know if there's enough people that figured it out. Because remember, I'm going to remind you, this came up all at the same time as well. All these environmental, neurobehavioral affecting toxicants have been given to us and allowed to us, and at least the knowledge, non-disclosed to us. Lead was a big one, because I think that actually, it was so prevalent, it got too much. So they come up with these guidelines that say, wait, we can't do that at all. I mean, it's so bad we can't do that. We'll stick aluminum in the vaccines, which may or may not do anything, but we know it's toxic, but we're going to give it to you anyway. Mercury may be the same way. See, methyl mercury, remember, I said methyl, not mercury, methyl mercury was the toxicant. Remember, I've talked to you about that. The very fact that they don't allow a miner to stir up the creeks and the rivers where mercury naturally forms creates that very toxic thing through the anaerobic processes in the environment. And yet they will not allow a miner to go into those natural areas and literally pull it all back out and oxygenate the environment by stirring it up and moving it around where the rivers may or may not quick enough. So remember, it was methyl mercury that was the toxin, not mercury there. So this is where I told you before, you focused on the vaccines on mercury. It wasn't that necessarily. I'm not saying I'm going to drink a whole bunch of mercury or that, doing stuff, or vapors. My point is that there are specificities that are looked at that we tend to generalize. And these things are regulated by the government. That at the bottom line, this is Corporation Nation. Again, Clint Richards has done some great work. When I explained to him how all of it was legal, that flipped him. I mean, that really kind of tweaked him a bit, I think. And then he started to look at the code that I could point to him and say, look at it. They're telling us that they're going to hurt us. They're telling us they're treating us like animals. They're treating us worse than animals. Even pests have a higher status than a human, than a man. Remember Title 7, Title 9, Title 15, and maybe Title 25 or 21. Again, you can find all this stuff. These legalists degraded man and women and their offspring, and because they have no power and authority to rule any of it. So they created a fictional environment, and they decided that you would be following that, and you didn't say no. You didn't throw them. They're an occupation in your life. You didn't throw them off. So I want to remind you, and this came up at the same time with this neurobehavioral effects of these chemicals and elements, what everyone should know about the new quarantine regulation. Apparently, we talked about this before. I just wanted to make note of it. It's apparently in effect now, and this is what I told you. You don't work against this. This gets around all your protections, everything, every way. They base it in police power and your threat to the larger community, and they bring everything into non-specificity, so you have really not much to defend yourself against. And if you haven't been listening to me, where you're getting yourself together to watch out for each other and have the proper, even paperwork, and see, a lot of this is having a witness. The paperwork starts the process of making it formal, but you need friends around you to protect you so that the inside knows the outside knows what's going on the inside. That it's going under scrutiny. As I tell women that may ask me about child services, I said, you make sure you make them know, and you meet you maintain every meeting you can ever make with your little ones. Don't let them get away with them not having to present them to you as many times a week as possible. It's a burden, but you have to see, the government has to know you're not going to forget about your little one. Same thing here. Someone gets picked up on one of these new regulations of quarantine, they have to know there's a lot of people, and you're going to be smart about this. Because you go down and you do it the wrong way, they'll pick you up because you're the exposed one. You may have to go down there in a hazmat suit. Okay, you got to look ahead. But these new quarantine regulations are on us, and they're pretty draconian. Can I use that word? Is that even good enough? Isn't it worse actually? Imagine men in bleach white biosuits with medical masks show up at your door. You are suspected of carrying a communicable disease. Remember, directly or indirectly infected, right? You will now be arrested and held without due process indefinitely. This is NDAA on steroids. They have the authority, in quotes, the authorita. They have the personnel. This is what now Russia was up against in the United States. They have the capacity to stop you if you try to fight them. So you're going to have to come up with figure out how to do it different. They have the funding. Now all they need is the excuse. Is the beginning of this report. I wanted to remind you there that apparently the regulations are now in effect. They have been since the first of the year, January or so. Interesting, one day before the new president took his puppet seat. But nonetheless, you need to understand these quarantine regulations and how, I'll say, draconian they are. And I think you need to really look at how and the remedies you have to be together, get together when you hear someone got pulled off or something like this, or if you understand what they're going to do. I'm not joking about having hazmat suits if you can afford to have them, or something that makes it look like you've been protected, and you don't ever give yourself. You always present yourself with all the evidence that you've been even better than they thought, so that they can't even put that on you. Which means, along with these facial recognitions and your ability to, you're looking for. What do you say, ways to avoid having your picture taken everywhere? If you start wearing these biological masks wherever you go, that's a good excuse, right? Because these new regulations mean at any time they can come and directly or indirectly pull you off. Well, if you have a mask on all the time and you understand about washing your hands and you have the right words in your mouth, you just might be able to say, well, your imposition is really a felony because you're using that as an excuse where I can't have been affected. I live like this. I'm one of those neurotic, clean people. Now, you may not be, but if you present that as the evidence, now maybe you got yourself something else going on. I know it sounds ridiculous. I'm telling you what's coming on, and I'm suggesting to you how you're going to have a word in your mouth and an action you take, which will start to defeat a lot of these people. This is the world they're bringing us to. The world is destroyed, and you're wearing a gas mask, folks. Please, don't think I'm going nuts here. Are you going to avoid it? They want an area now under these regulations. You don't even have to be directly affected. They just say a wind blew through. You want to know how it affects you? Look at what just happened in Syria and what they just did to Syria on a thing that Syria blew up, the chemicals of which got blown into the atmosphere, got blown into town because of the stiff wind, and that killed people. You don't even need that much for these people to say you were inoculated with the vector because you were downwind of it. You're going to have to be able to say how you weren't actually affected. You're going to have people around you to say how you were not affected. This is really no joke. I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't know how much. This is as dire as it gets. It's here. And I asked you all then to write your letters, and I don't think I got anybody to respond. I still can't get those that do the pot to do so. And if you did, I haven't got the note. Behind the Woodshed. MarkOnTheBeast@yahoo.com. Yes, I'm still there. And it's getting serious, and it's been serious, and I have no, alternative at this point. So at that point, I'm a hypocrite to continue to be vulnerable, as I don't know, really, I think we all are, as we've been hearing the digital impositions that are coming on. So here's another thing that we go, okay, we got this no regulation, the quarantine authority, they're so broad, you don't even have to be, they just kind of believe, you are indirectly affected and you have lost all your abilities to do much of anything. This is why you're going to have people together that can start sending in salvos of discussion and invoking things like I've told you, the fraud, the pretext, the color of law imposition that's not true. Be able to start defending yourself because you haven't. You're to that point because you haven't stopped it, and they're making it so you won't be able to. And yet, there's interesting technologies, so I'm wondering what the problem with this is. The scientists have discovered a way to destroy cancer tumors using nothing but sound waves. A recent breakthrough at high-intensity focused ultrasound therapy technology has proven its use as an effective cancer treatment. A multi-institutional research team from China developed a semi-enclosed spherical cavity transducer that can produce a focused standing wave field with a sub-wavelength scale focal region and extremely high ultrasound intensity. Essentially what they're talking about for sound is the thing you do with a magnifying glass in the sun when you psychopathic people, when you're growing up, started to burn ants just to watch them smoke. So this is what they're doing in this. They're focusing ultrasonic energy by this device onto a place very specifically to kill cancer. How does it kill cancer? Simply heating the space up. Ultrasonic heating. And so we have a way to get after at least a cancer. Now I'm wondering here, if that's the case, let's get on over to our frequency. You've heard all this stuff in the history about frequencies and health. What if you were to work this out and actually have live in an environment that was frequency-wise more healthy? Now this is a targeted energy that kind of opens it up to that there's dynamics in cells. I mean, this is not much different than why you heat your food to 160 degrees. Most cells, unless they're really terrible, and that goes to maybe 175 degrees, and there's only a few organisms that can do that, but they cannot survive at a temperature above it. So here's this ultrasonic energy that's focused on a point, essentially like you do with a magnifying glass and the focal point of light to a point. It heats up something to destroy it. It doesn't attack. It doesn't heat the rest of doesn't heat the rest of the cells because they're not of a certain absorption for that frequency or that power. And so here we have these ideas that I came up, that seemed to strike my mind. Well, okay, we got this heinous new quarantine regulations that can get you at a distance. Maybe we should now look very carefully at what technology there might be in order to be able to assert our environment does not allow these kinds of vectors, and we then at least have a statement that says, you're using that as a pretext to harm me. And that's not within your police power. Again, what you're going to say, oh, that's not going to work, who you're up against. You have nothing, folks. You better try something. And I'm also saying, if you start to think about this this way, maybe you can intercede upon this problem. I suggested that before about this quarantine regulation. People had to step up, and I doubt very seriously enough people must not have, because it kept going. It's a rule, folks. And they went to police powers, and they went to the very difficult one. So we have to have something in our mind about why the dynamic of that, so that we can counter it. That regulation has the ability to, essentially, if I get this right, to literally shut down whole cities. What I don't know. I mean, my mind just stops right there. Whole cities can be shut down. What dystopian future movie have you seen that does? I mean, there's a handful of those. And so here we have this technology that can focus beams of sound to kill cancer. Now, again, it's still in the lab, I understand, but I kind of believe there's a real good. It has a physical function that is physically true about biology that is easily understood. Then I came up with this fast, deadly laser wielding underwater robots revolutionize fish farming. This is a device that shoots out a literal light beam, not a sound beam, but don't think that there's not a way to figure this out as well. That a laser beam gets shot out from this device. It's sitting in an aquaculture salmon pen that shoots a laser to kill, identifies on the salmon the louse living on the salmon, which is a very big problem. They spend like $1 billion, literally billion. I couldn't believe that. I didn't realize fish farming was this large. $1 billion a year just to fight the louse on a salmon. That someone's come up with a device that sits in the pen. It just sits on a pole, and it sits there and hangs just at a level. And as the fish goes by this device, the computer software recognizes the louse that's on the salmon and shoots a laser beam, heating it up and killing it. It doesn't affect the fish because the fish's scales are reflective. They do this real time. As the fish, they can serve 10,000 fish in a day. It's fascinating. There's a video, I'll give you a link. It's a fascinating thing. They have louse recognition software that they can target with a device hanging from a rod, a drone that shoots a laser beam to kill the louse on the fish. And it's so effective, they don't have to do anything else. It literally works. Now let me turn your attention now to drones and recognition, digital software recognition of a louse. Now you're the pest, folks. You're worse than an animal pest under federal law. That FBI facial recognition technology has no limits, a congressional hearing reveals. As I move us along into the iterations of what we can start to see eventually about how this starts to work. They already consider you an animal, worse than a pest. Now face recognition technology has told us to have no limits. This is actually an older story, but I found it interesting how it fits in here, and it was preceding these technologies I put together. Yes, I'm fabricating the construction of these technologies to work in this area, but I think I've done pretty well in my history to be able to do so and have them turn out to be what they end up being. Facial recognition technology to identify who you are, what you are, and then we found out there's this big error that they can do. That was the problem we talked about before. But let's figure out that instead of the louse that this device identifies, this device identifies your face. And it's got a laser. And it's enough to kill you. And you think this is sci-fi? Connecticut may become the first United States to allow state to allow deadly police drones. Is it sci-fi now, folks? They got a device that will any fish swim past this device, it'll laser kill every louse on the fish. Zap, 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 by identifying software recognizing the face of the louse. FBI says in a hearing there's no limit to the FBI face recognition technology that Connecticut now, and I think they passed this, it says it was going to allow, I think they did, pass that now you can have drones that use deadly force. They also outlawed you from using any of that, so that shows you what prison you live in. That I don't think it's a quantum jump to have these devices. You see these now on airplanes, military aircraft now using lasers to take out other flying, or ships as well, floating devices. We also heard about the technology that can, by certain frequency, change your mind. We see the ultrasonics can kill cancer. We see that now this device can kill an organism on another organism. When Gaia is the organism and you are the louse on the surface, and the police now can use deadly force, are you any different than the louse on a salmon? I think is beyond question. Yes, maybe it sounds a little out there. I don't think so anymore. I told you a few weeks ago, it doesn't seem that there's anything in sci-fi that we aren't doing. You'll probably be lucky if they use a laser, otherwise they're going to guns. Right there on the street, you're going to be executed. And then they say, oops, our facial recognition had a glitch. Oops, it was hacked. Well, we didn't even intend that guy or gal or that little one. Talk about horrific attacks. They're willing to do horrific attacks on images that they purport to be of horrific attacks. There is no limit to facial recognition in Connecticut, and North Dakota also did this, if I remember correctly. I don't know if they actually followed through, but they authorized drones to be also in your life. And we have a device that goes to salmon, that goes to the pest, that kills the pest right off the moving body. I don't see this as a big jump. Despite the fact, and you're right to, not feel so cool, about this intrusion. Why I've been telling you, you don't know what this big data thing's doing at the hands of the people that want to eventually kill you, control you, condemn you, con you. Let's cut right to the point of that. And they're continuing to do it right in front of your face. Remember that school of fish? You keep going after the shiny things. Well, now that shiny thing is a laser, and it's going to take you out. Most Americans were unwilling to give up privacy to thwart attacks. Relative to the war of terror against you, Americans are unwilling, yet I hear crickets. Americans don't have a clue. They've already done it, and no one's saying anything about it. So, despite the fact that most Americans are unwilling to give up the privacy, they're already living in a system, as I say, the silent one, quiet wars, that have already stolen it, and steal it, and will. And they will use things like the salmon louse killer on you when they don't like you. For as much as the Americans are unwilling, and yet they are giving it up, and not really outwardly making any overt acts to say stop, finding the pretext of the war on terror, calling it out for the war of terror, and say you don't have a right. There is no national security interest in that. People in Europe are agreeing to be implanted with microchips. Apparently they don't consider that an invasion of privacy. We were just talking about this it wasn't even a year ago. Microchips are being implanted in volunteers to help them open doors and operate office equipment, and it's become so popular that members of the Epicenter Cyborg Club hold regular parties for those with tiny chips embedded in their hands. Employees in Europe. Employees is a master-servant relationship. Master-slave is not really much different. You're subject, and that's voluntarism, folks, for those people that want to keep promoting this stuff and deny you're already doing it. You don't know the extent of how much you're voluntaryism. There are people that agree, Americans may be unwilling, people in Europe are getting the chips, folks. The syringe slides in between the thumb and index finger, then with a click, a microchip is injected into the employee's hand. Another, quote, cyborg is created. They're actually talking this up. I can go again. I can read and read. You're saying, I won't do it. I'm going to tell you what, your little kids, your little goats, they're going to do it. Remember, you work, they can have a genetic test. Let me say something else about these little microchips. They're finding out when they put it in pets, there's masses of tissue that develop around these things. Now we also hear about radio controls, and we hear that the body now can power these things, that it's not much of a jump to figure out if you get onto a neural network within the body, it doesn't take much energy to start controlling what you at least are producing as chemicals that may control how you think, how you perceive, and what you might do. It certainly puts in your hand, in this cashless society, the means to get things done, where if you don't, you can't. If you don't get the genetic test, you don't work. You don't get the chip, you don't eat. How's that? Where Americans are making a faux reluctance of being attacked in their privacy, in what they think is privacy. Europeans are now, isn't there a joke about European? Somewhere. At any rate, Europeans are willingly getting this stuff, and they make a big party out of it. Your future is in hand, folks. They will know what you're doing, where you are. Maybe even, it seems to me, if I can put out an irradiate your body by your own, the Matrix is not a movie. You're in a pod. Well, this microchip's in a pod. They're getting the energy from you to re-radiate energy into you. that controls you to some extent over time. Maybe it's a binary weapon. They inject you with a vaccine or put some other chemical that's a neurobehavioral toxin in your body and activate it with this chip. And all of a sudden you do what you're told and don't know it. You get the employee of, your picture's on the Employee of the Month poster. I'm stunned. I'm just looking at, 10 years ago, this wasn't even a thought. It's happening. It's happening. And the technology they're telling us is all around us to do other things to us. And we're oblivious to it. And I guess this is the territory, this is the battlefield. If we don't understand it, we'll be susceptible to it, to the traps, the landmines that are placed, the strategies, the tactics, the infiltrators. We can't even see the infiltrators now. I don't see how we're going to see, like I said a long time ago, we're too drunk on our ignorance here to really act. I hate to find out we're going to act and then be ignorant. That's a serious thing. So it's really kind of not very comforting to me to not see that there's like thousands and thousands of people that won't listen to the message I'm bringing. It's not just the news. It's just not the thing that you're next to see. There's an interrelation to everything we're being given notice is going on. And we have to understand that it's there, whether or not any of you want to understand that and do something more than just yak and chat about it. Or even know. Again, knowledge is not power. You're going to have to move and take action. I say that over and over. When somebody came up and said, what was that? When Bruce Lee said something about, knowing is not enough. You have to take action. And I said, okay, if you won't listen to me, I think I did it on Twitter. If you don't listen to me, listen to Mr. Lee. Listen to Bruce. Bruce said it. It's not enough to know. You have to take action. And employees they're going to get microchipped. The slaves are. Those that are working and as slaves are going to be told you have to have these genetic tests. They're going to find out what's in your genes, and they're going to give you a microchip that can control that. And make sure whether or not you've been injected by the things you have. And you take that chip, or you are investigated by this quarantine and you don't have what you have, they'll make you all right. You don't think this is the re-indoctrination center is ready to go? You're indefinitely detained until your genetics shows that you're receptive to being compliant? But if you're not, you become the louse on a salmon that the cyborg robot comes along and lasers you right off the face of the earth? You think, what? I mean, is that too far-fetched? If they vaporize you from space, they don't even have anything to clean up, folks. So much for feeding the populace Soylent Green. No more spinach people. Nobody they have to worry about. Not even composting. You don't have to worry about it. Far-fetched? I can't see how. I really can't see how. Now, how has all this started? But started when they decided, they just told us that the world had changed. 9/11. And why we're here now with all this stuff that was all rolled out before. Again, the plan to go hit Syria wasn't done in 12 hours. It was done by a plan over months. It was an excuse, and then it was a lame attack, so something else is playing. But this all was started. Give the pretext of national security cause on 9/11, and it just so happens, like last week, the FBI just released, again, these people that are perpetrators, just released never-before-seen photos of 9/11 Pentagon wreckage. And for those of you that haven't seen the pictures, you'll get it in the blogcaster again, reallibertymedia.com. And the only really thing I want to point out is there's a couple pictures. And I don't know if you remember the Pentagon, but it was supposed to be hit by a big, giant airplane. And the picture that you see, one of the pictures that you see from the top with a big red circle around it, is where this big, giant airplane supposedly hits the Pentagon. And I want you to take special note of the flagpole, These pictures were taken right at the time. And I don't know, it must have been right after they set up a bunch of construction equipment, or they were doing an awful lot of work to that building because there's a lot of construction equipment on the front. I don't even see the pentalawn on this thing. The lawn that never had a scrape put on it by this big monstrous airplane coming in and going into that Pentagon. There's a red circle around a damage. I want to remind you. Well, there's a light pole that's out, right? It could not have survived, first of all, is what I took note. I'm just looking at a picture. What do I know? But the hole is a little bitty hole they have a circle around. I want to remind you of another picture you may have seen. And it's evidenced in this one picture. Remember they showed us another picture from inside the Pentagon of the little hole in the third ring. It was the back side of the third ring. There was a hole out of a wall. It was all blown out. Smoke around the outside edge, and you could see light through it. But they were focused straight in. Actually, I don't think you could see light through it. Straight in. Just a black hole opening the wall. I want you to look very carefully at this picture and notice the damage that's in the circle. And then I want you to look at the third ring, and you can see the black sooty hole in the third ring. I want you to take notice of the second ring. There's no damage to the second ring. So the magic trick is, how did they get a airplane to go and not touch the second ring? And how did they get that big airplane to be so small? Now, the theory is it's a missile. But how did the missile get through and miss the second ring? What was the explosion in the third ring? It's just more questions to me, but shows the story of being the story. On and on and on. Only questions. Images that we get to see. That the people are taking license to come and harm you over all these years. It really is a fascination. It's not like we haven't been here saying we have real problems that we have to deal with. In other words, our not dealing with it, our silence, our cricketness, continues to allow them to do what they do every day as they move this thing forward to the future they want. I'm just fascinated about all the lie and all this story that continues to be being told, that we have just basic questions without action. I'm doing it right here. Well, how come we have no damage in the second ring? Who cares at some level? But there it is. What are you going to do with that? Is it enough now to finally break over that we're being played big time about everywhere we look on any level? And all I'm suggesting then is that we see this in the macro. It's happening to you in the micro. And I'll recall, it flashed in my mind, William Roberts would tell you, become vocal local. I was saying the same thing. He started the phrase. I was telling it, we come together. It was like we were talking the same language. We were singing the same song. Didn't even know him. Came from completely different places. Came to the same answer. That's the truth, folks. I keep telling you that. And then what do? And that was interesting, another interesting experience with William Roberts. He found out that taking your knowledge and applying it is a little more difficult, but it's not, but you can accomplish it, but it takes a very special process. As I say, you have to do things more correctly. I say do it right, but sometimes it takes a while to figure out what the right is. So we go more correctly than we have been in the past. And I mean substantially more correctly, not doing little bits and pieces. I have available to offer quite a bit of ways to get around the lame tools that they've been using in the past. And what lame tools are they doing but making lies up front that you start to engage the argument and give validity to the lie. And every once in a while we see evidence that someone's paying attention to that. The seats of decision are criminals, though they'll tell you it's only rarely. And I have evidence it's a complete continuous crime against us. Brooklyn prosecutor charged with faking judges' signatures for illegal wiretaps. Now, I look at that and say, why is that even a news except that it's news? It's notice to us that these guys will do this. And this guy got caught, so I guess they want to take credit for catching him. But that's the system that allowed it, too. He thought he could get it, or she can get away with it. I can't remember. I think it's a woman now that I thought about it. But again, these stories are so old now, weeks past, I keep forgetting what they are until I get there. So Tara Lenich at 41. Assistant District Attorney. Signing her own, forging judges' certificates. Well, if you go look at a normal order, they don't even sign it. Judges don't even sign the certificates much anymore. Any of them. They put the little S on it, SS, like this is exactly they're telling us. But so here's a prosecutor that will, it's not good enough they can lie, indict a ham sandwich and get a conviction. They got to lie on illegal wiretaps. So what's this wiretap illegality? If we now see that, what is this conundrum that they've now developed? There's something called illegal wiretaps. What happened to the NSA tapping everything, or the CIA, whoever's doing it? What about the wire recordings that they do of your life, like Windows 10? You think that their contract to do so, or unconscionable contract, is sufficient? Well, I don't know. I don't think so. There's a system that'll protect all that. Why? Because they want you in that system. For as much as Americans would say they are unwilling to break the privacy, they just watched Congress get rid of it for the bottom line. And that privacy rolls itself out as even prosecutors can't even get, they don't care. They just sign this stuff over, and then maybe one gets caught. What about the rest that haven't? What about all these other ones that are really slick and sly and get away with it? Apparently she did something wrong within the office. They need to get rid of her. That's the only reason why you see it. Otherwise it continues to go. They get these illegal wiretaps. Well, in the meantime, they have probable cause to believe that you did something wrong. You're the louse on the face of Gaia, and the drone goes out and lasers you off the face. You're not even be able to witness against the crime against you now. It all happens automatically. Why? Because you're an enemy combatant. Where do we find that out? Where the United States government abandoned international law, and no one got the memo, except you got it behind the woodshed, 2010, for NDAA. Indefinite detention, do you think that means vaporization by laser delouser? You are the louse? Orwell rolls in grave as police roll out unprecedented drone air force to track antisocial behavior. Tied to NDAA means that they're going to have that salmon delouser on a machine or flying around, and you're going to be zapped because you show antisocial behavior. It's all about behavior. It's all why they use this epigenetic alterations. It's all why they're telling you about the neurotoxicity, the toxicants that are there, and that they've been feeding them to you. It's all about getting you to behave. And if they don't like it, they're coming with the salmon delouser, you louse. North Dakota and Connecticut have got the lead. They can say they use drones with deadly weapons. I don't see okay, maybe they won't use a laser. Maybe you're a little more tough than a louse where a laser's concerned. Maybe you're not. Maybe they have the power ultrasonically to heat you up like a microwave and fry you right there. Maybe they can hang above your house where they find you out and do it in your sleep. Prosecutor writes illegal wiretaps to get some evidence of due probable cause to go have something happen to you indefinitely. Then we find out another problem. Stunning drug lab scandal could overturn 23,000 convictions. This one got caught. We talked about this before. It's meeting the news again. The annals of wrongful convictions. There is nothing that comes close in size to the epic drug lab scandal that is entering in dramatic final act. Its dramatical final act in Massachusetts. This is what we reported before. What if all these illegal drug tests that were done, and think about your genetic tests that gets altered because some technician in some lab is paid to do so, that you have a database and big data that this drone is out there looking to delouse the face of the earth, and you're the louse, and it comes and delouses you, and then we find out the lab test was no good. After the fact. Is not a world I'd like to see for y'all. It's not enough that they caught this one. It's that they're building a system that allows the next one, or the ones you didn't catch, or the system that would say, oh, pedophile conviction and arrest, and they're the ones that are using that to cover what they do wrong. again, pausing. I don't know what I wish I had in me the way to change your apathetic behavior to protect yourself. Yes, I want to change your behavior as I think about it. I wish I had this power, but not to hurt you, not to test things out, not to change you, more than to change your action, that you become properly activated in doing something for you, not let these people do things to you. They're literally, they dropped down. When you didn't understand when they dropped down due process, it means the allowance of all this as presumptions in law that what were affecting you, that these occupiers have imposed upon you. You miss it. You're not hearing what I'm saying. These people have us figured out, and we haven't really admitted to our failures, our fallen nature, if you will. Not even the most sinful. I'm talking even the day-to-day stuff, and I get that. I mean, there's lots that I don't like doing, and I'd kind of put off. I'm a procrastinator. As much as I'm an optimist, I'm a procrastinator too. As much as we still get done, I still got my mind in places I'd rather be. Still hold out sometimes, don't want to do that, don't want to do that, and finally you got to do it. Just the reality has, you got to grow up, put your big boy and big boy pants on, big girl dress, if I can be so gender specific. But these things they're doing to us and allowing to themselves to do to us, underneath the auspices of fighting crime, fighting terror, fighting drugs, all this other stuff, are imposed. They're the self-inflicted wounds, and none of us really step up in any numbers. I know some of us are. That we see evidence after evidence that in systemic corruption that comes out as a presumption of law and truth and a presumption of right and authority and power, and people get hurt. Not much different than the bombing of an aircraft area in Syria. On images, I'm so stunned that even came out of their lips as the reason. I could not believe what I was hearing. On the mere image, the photograph, you know Photoshop, folks, right? On the mere image, do we have $100 million of expenses going to bomb someone else's place? And that then gave aid and comfort to the so-called enemy that the government of the United States is claiming it is attempting to fight, which we know that's another lie. Is us. And I hear crickets on there. And I just don't know more. I just keep plugging away. And I hope you will too. So today I hope some awareness, show the correlations between what's happening out in the world, is doing this in a different way, happening to you locally, and that it requires a response, but that response may have to be metered to the actual force and power you actually have to wield. You have one, but where and how is it? And then picking the right remedy to get that accomplished. Thank you for tuning in today. Hope something I said did help you out. Please guide your thoughts. Maybe put us in a better, different place. Whatever you can do, folks. Find the wrong you need to make right and do so. Thank you to Grimner and RealLibertyMedia.com for allowing the place, and Archive, Blogcaster, and all that, which do their Grimner. I appreciate it. And UCY.TV and Jules, and your simulcast, and broadcast, pastcast, and the recast on Thursdays, right after, I think, Game On with Ron. And terrestrial broadcasters, thank you for what you do. And then the Freedoms Network, folks, I understand there's still a little bit more needed on the donations to freedomsnetwork.com. If you use this source or appreciate social networks that are free of all this nonsense and give us a place, then donate there to help Bo Diddy out. He's already put that forward. And so we support his work. Thank you again. I'll be here next week. Tech Diffs, nature willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
kind of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.
Hey, this is JJ Inc., and when I'm on planet Earth, I listen to UCY.TV.